If you look at what's happening with the wearable devices that many people are getting accustomed to now, starting to warm up to, the bands, the watches, even some virtual and augmented reality glasses, and then look at the connected home technology we talked about earlier, the mobiles that already flood our lives, and now the connected car, I'd be hard-pressed to think of a time in the last 5 to 7 years when I've detected more consumer sensitivity re-emerging around data privacy and security. We saw a lot of this in the early days of the smartphone revolution, and then we got comfortable with what the parameters are. Things bubble up once in a while. We saw this in the early days of the personal computer on the internet, but now we're seeing another third wave of people saying, wait a minute, I want to know that my data is secure, and now you're coming at me, you technology people, from 3 waves, my wearable, my home, and my car. So connected car is kind of bundled into a broader issue that's going to raise its profile, and of course, as we talked about already this morning, cars aren't like other products. As Mike just mentioned, you can't just treat them as, well, it should work, or it's almost perfect. We know that these are big, heavy devices with liability and the possibility of injury or death around them. They're like nothing else in the technology space that way. So now let's dive into this area of cybersecurity and keeping these vehicles from being attacked, hacked, either having our information taken or having the kind of nightmare scenario that's out there that you'll hear once in a while about vehicles being hacked on the road so they are no longer under control of the driver or even the vehicle's own systems. Here's our panel for you. It's a great one. I want to bring up Gil Litichever, who's the CEO of Arilou Technologies. Where's Gil? Gil's here somewhere. Here he is. Come on up, Gil. Let's hear it for Gil. Take a seat there, Gil. Michael Cammisa is Director of Safety for the global automakers, the big OEM group. Please welcome Michael. We've got Chris Valasek, who's Director of Vehicle Security Research at IOActive. Let's bring up Chris. And our moderator for this panel, and expert in his own right, of course, we've got Karl Heimer here, Senior Consultant at Assured Information Security, to lead our discussion. Please welcome Karl.
Thank you. Good morning. So walking in here, I was really excited to see all of the great new cars, the new capabilities that are being developed by the automotive industry to give to the consumers. There is maybe, however, one shadow on the horizon that we need to talk about, and that's the security shadow. It's been getting much more press time in the last couple of years. So let's let the elephant out of the bag. Cars have been hacked. It's been documented. In 2010 and 2011, 2 papers from University of Washington and UCSD were issued, and they really, I think, started a lot of interest in this space. Since then, there have been other people that have tried the car. Chris Valasek, famously, and Charlie Miller have had several presentations. So the problem is, if I attacked a browser or an app or something 4 years ago, there'd be a lot of activity. And I don't see that here. Why?
You know, software is opportunistic, and it's easy to get. If you want to attack a browser, you go download it for free. If you want to attack a car, you got to buy a car, and depending on which car you buy, you know, tens of thousands of dollars.
So it's a cost for the barrier to entry, or is it also a harder target?
Oh, it's a harder target as well. It's I would call it more kind of boutique hardware and software. We're familiarized with software security. We've seen it for a long time. We've attacked Windows, we've attacked Linux, we've attacked Mac. But cars are kind of a different beast, so it takes, I would say, more skill, more effort, more money. Just generally, the return on investment right now isn't very high.
So this is pretty good news, at least for the near term. So we might be in front of this, right?
Well, I don't know if we're in front or behind it. That's always hard to say because you know, you usually go off public instances of attack, and you know, to my knowledge, there's not many, if any, public actual instances of, say, you know, remote control of a car through a vulnerability. But at the same time, the security concept in the automotive community seems behind what software security is, because they haven't had to deal with it as long as, say, Microsoft or Google.
So, Mike, you're standing up a capability to start that community of interest.
Yeah, so you know, one of the things you've heard from the other panels today is with the connected car technology, There's tremendous opportunity for innovation with new features in vehicles that will improve vehicle safety, reduce traffic congestion, and reduce emissions. The customer sees that as saving fuel, saving lives, saving time, and saving fuel, but they want to know that their personal data is protected and that their vehicle systems are secure. And so automakers have been working to design cybersecurity into cyber protection into their vehicles and systems individually, but we saw that there's an opportunity for the industry to work together in collaboration and share information about cyber vulnerabilities, threats, and incidents. And so we're working on the Association of Global Automakers and the Alliance of Automobile Manufacturers are working with our members to prepare a formal mechanism for this information sharing. And we're looking at some models that other industries have done, something called an ISAC, which stands for Information Sharing and Analysis Center. And it provides a place for trusted parties to exchange information about these cyber threats and develop responses as necessary, analyze them for their actual potential to occur, and just sort of share that information within the industry and also have some connections outside the industry.
So Gil, you've got a unique spot. You're both offense and defense, and you're not an automaker, but you're in the value chain. You want to be a supplier. How would you want to interact with an ISAC, and how would you want to be able to sort of enter the discussion and form some policy?
Well, we have a unique standpoint, a unique point of view on the issue. And I believe, first of all, we would like to get that into the ISAC as part of the industry, that it's outside the automotive industry. However, we are cybersecurity industry. We're outside of it. So we have a very unique standpoint, and I think it would be a very good idea for us and other companies that do exactly this thing to be part of that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. The auto industry, in each industry that sets something up like this has their own challenges and their own uniqueness. In the auto industry, what we've got is the vehicles interacting with themselves connectedly, also connecting to outside devices that people bring into the vehicle. So, the ecosystem that we're dealing with that would be involved with the ISAC is something we definitely need to look at and bring in the right people, connect with the right organizations to make sure that we're getting the best information possible, not only about threats, but also about how to make better systems.
Right now it's hard too, because I'm an outsider looking in, right? I'm not involved in the auto industry. I'm basically, the hacker guy, right? So I tend to try to find these things, and I want to disclose them to let you know how I did it, how it can be fixed. It's easy for software to do that now. It's security at whatever company. It's a lot harder now for vehicles because you don't really know who to talk to as an outsider.
Right, and you've got, each individual company has its own structure, and then just trying to get something across to all the companies. So the mechanism that we're trying to set up would provide that. And also then have interaction with the government as well. They may be aware of cyber threats and information that they'd want to pass along. And so this would make a formalized connection for that. So instead of having to reinvent the wheel to try to get new information into the auto industry, that we have something set up that's already out there and ready to roll. Also, we want to interact with other industries. I think we've got a situation where you might see a cyber threat in one industry, and there's something about that protocol or that method that might translate then to another industry. So where somebody might try to do something and hack into financial services or aviation, at some point that may filter its way to our industry. So if we can be sharing information, exchanging information with the other industries, I think that makes us all more secure.
You see that happen in computing all the time. As a bug hunter, you call it ambulance chasing. You see a bug in a web browser, and you know that your phone runs that web browser, a car runs that web browser. You're going to try the same bug that was disclosed a year ago in software on several different things to see if it still works.
So talking about bug hunting, there are these things called bug bounties. They're very popular in some industries. What do you think the effectiveness is for them? We'll just go down the line. Gil?
I think this could be a very highly effective method if you combine that with regulation. I don't think that many industries do not have the incentive to actually find the bugs. It's a lot of work. Security costs you money. It does not necessarily gain you money. It's not something, it doesn't necessarily sell. However, On the other hand, when it comes to regulations and things like that, when it comes to security, checklists do not work. It's very difficult. Someone who makes a checklist thinks inside the box. A hacker thinks outside the box. He'll just look at the checklist and say, OK, this is what protected. I'll go around that. When it comes to bounty hunting, you take a hacker, and if he finds something, he gets money for it, meaning that you put someone inside who has the incentive to find the problems. And I think that will be a very good solution to find bugs inside systems.
I think Gil actually brings up a good point in that answer, too, about sort of the cultural change that needs to take place within the industry. We've always addressed safety issues, and a couple of things that we've done, typically sort of high-level concept is safety by design, where you try to anticipate ways that a system might malfunction and how you can design the system to be robust enough to deal with that, and also segmentation and isolation of critical systems. Well, in the current world now, segmentation and isolation, we're looking at connections. So we're actually kind of looking at how to use data across systems. So how do you keep that segmentation and isolation and yet still benefit from the information that can pass from one system to another to improve vehicle performance and safety? And then secondarily, on the safety by design, engineers looked at it as, well, how might this piece of equipment fail? What component might fail? How would it fail? We're talking about people with malicious intent really, focusing on how to attack a system. And so that's a change in culture, and that's going through the industry, and reaching out to the hacker community in various ways, as you described, I think is helping us. And you're seeing the companies hiring up new people, changing their organizational structures to look at the product as part of a holistic product development holistically. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah. I'm generally a fan of bug bounties because I was at one point, a professional bug hunter. But you can't just pop them up. There needs to be a trust relationship. Even if you're giving me money, I have to trust that the deal will go down as how I think it is and how you think it is. So you can't just say, all right, we have a bug bounty now, start submitting bugs. People who do security are natural skeptics. We get paid to be skeptics. So we're always skeptical if someone new comes on the block and is saying, hey, we're going to provide this service. You want to be able to trust them. So I think, like you said, there needs to be cultural changes where they accept that there's going to be security issues and people outside the organization are going to find them, and you can work with each other to remediate these issues, as opposed to looking at people who submit issues to you as bad guys or attackers, right? Attackers aren't going to tell you where you messed up. Like people like me, I will tell you because I want it fixed. I want technology to be better and more secure. So I like bug bounties, but you have to have a very good trust relationship for them to work.
And that's part of the ISAC, is establishing that trust relationship too, and that's a critical component.
You can be the hacker Lorax, right? You can speak to us and we trust you.
I want to be able to take some questions from the audience, if anybody has some. Sure.
Yeah, just
we need to bow in front of the
down.
gods of security. Thank you. My name is Andreas May, Cisco Systems, Smart Connected Vehicles. We have found that there is kind of an inherent insecurity in vehicles. Vehicles are simply not designed to protect themselves against modern cybercrimes. So from that angle, we are strong believers that you need augmentation from the cloud. The cloud needs to support the protection of the vehicle. How far do you think automakers, and that's a question obviously for Michael, have realized that they have to have this tandem? You need to protect the car on kind of the vehicle side, but even more importantly on the cloud side.
Yeah, and there's a couple aspects to that. I mean, one is the current technology and the future, coming near future technology, being able to protect that. One of the ways with some software updates, I think somebody was talking about plugging something into the OBD to update software. Ultimately, over-the-air updates would be beneficial as well. But then we also have the next, and we're seeing some companies already implementing that, and so I think the auto industry is following that. And then we also have the vehicle-to-vehicle connectivity that we're looking at. NHTSA recently issued their advanced notice of proposed rulemaking on that, and the security associated with that, with the, having the data going back and forth between vehicles and to the infrastructure or the cloud. So we're addressing that too with security credential management system and things like that.
There's also an aspect that a lot of, say, software people don't have to worry about, right, is the vehicle to the back end is designed to communicate. So you have to think of every consumer as also a potential attacker. It's a really hard problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is that I think we need a layered type of security. And at least to my opinion, the cloud is not the strong part there. The cloud is already a bit problematic when it comes to cybersecurity. There are a lot of problems there, and a lot of companies that struggle to make it real secure. And cars should have layer security also in the cloud layer, also in the communication to the cloud, but specifically inside the vehicle. This is the critical part. I mean, the cloud should protect your personal data. No one should know where you are, what's your name, where you drove. However, the cloud should by no means be your only line of defense when someone is trying to take over your vehicle. This should be part of the vehicle itself.
No defense should be the only line of defense. Defense. You need to layer
defense there.
Yeah. I have one comment on that too, which is the CAN bus has one imperative: availability. That's it, availability. If something's sending a message, it's received somewhere. It's time to start getting a replacement that has some notion of confidentiality, some notion of integrity, some notion of protection. Sir.
Hi, I'm Ravi Shankar. I work for Morgan Stanley. I'm an analyst that covers the OEM, supplier, and dealer stocks as well. A question on, just what your advice would be to the automakers as they move to an autonomous world. Because right now we're talking about connected cars, we have smartphones and the connectivity that goes in from the phone itself. But then if you have the car that's driving itself and it's a completely separate set of systems, would you advise them to keep them separate, merge them all together with a higher level of security? Or what would you say the automakers need to do to make the future autonomous car really secure?
Again, when it comes to layers, here I think about architecture. There are the critical parts that control the vehicle and control what the vehicle should do. The parts that communicate to the outside world should be somehow architecturally disconnected from them. I mean, they should be connected in the sense that there only a specific type of messages should pass there. But in the end of the day, I think architecture is the solution for these, let's say, high-end type of security problems.
Chris, you want to go next?
I mean, I don't think there is ever a solution in security. There's no solutions in security. There's just minimizing, taking acceptable levels of risk, right? You're always going to be exposed to a certain extent because these systems are designed to communicate with the outside world and take actions upon what it sees. Architecture is a part, and just having the culture of security to know when you're designing these things that you have to think about not only functionality, but attack scenarios when you're building these pieces of equipment. You can't just say, we hope a tire doesn't fall off. You have to say, what happens if someone finds a vulnerability in this radio that actually makes the wheel turn because it sees the lanes of the road? These have to be thought about from the design to the implementation and afterwards as well.
And it's similar to what with current designs and systems. You want to look at the entry point to the vehicle, which they call the threat vector, the network architecture, which is sort of the operating system, and then the control system that's actually operating the feature. So you actually need protection in all of those levels.
So, Rod, go ahead.
We've heard a lot about something called a hypervisor, which is a layer of code that comes in and kind of protects that. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, is that something that's an effective barrier?
It adds another barrier, right? It makes it harder. It doesn't make it impossible. We have those in computers now, and people can escape them to, attack all the hosts. Everything helps, but there is, like I said, I don't think there's any one solution to the problem.
So Roger gets the last question, and we're running short on time, so compact answers.
Oh, okay. Well, Chris, I truly believe you and your colleague did the industry a service in calling attention to the fact by having self-parking technology and vehicle connectivity, we've created an opportunity, and not a good one, for people such as yourself to play around with cars.
Thank you.
However, I am looking for maybe a clarification of the motivations behind you and you and your colleague did, because I think at the time there was a comment made at one of the events where you were describing what you did to the effect that, well, if you give us a car, we won't, hack your car and embarrass you. So it started getting the overtones of industry extortion. So could you clarify? I think it's a legitimate perception, actually. And also, at the same time, you were offering a product solution, so then it became kind of a pitch, like you were trying to, sell something as opposed to, the sort of the hacker's creed seemed to be kind of violated from my perception. So if you could clarify what you're up to.
So our product was just a thing we made. We're not selling it. We just said, hey, you could make one of these, right? I'm kind of flattered that I'm being called extortion artist. I wish I had that skill. But in reality, we joke around because it's fun work for us. We have a good time doing it. If you've seen any of the videos, we're cackling and laughing because we think it's cool. We are just trying to raise awareness. We're trying to show that each car is different, right? We did it on 2 cars. We don't know if we can do the same thing with multiple cars. We want to continue our research, continue to publicly release everything we do. So not only can you reproduce the work to show that we're not liars, but you can examine it for yourself. And if you're a manufacturer, a tier 1 OEM, you may be able to take the information we provide you and make your product better.
Could you just a quick follow-up? For the panel, not just for Chris.
Sure.
So there was some other news that maybe you're all familiar with, which was Argus, the Israeli security company, hacked the Zubi device, and I haven't really dug into it in great depth. They claimed they took control of the car. And so we're all hearing about these OBD2 devices being sold to consumers. I have one in my car. I don't think there's any question that this introduces a point of vulnerability and raises questions about the level of security of those devices. I don't know if any of you looked at that particular hack or that particular opportunity. What's the comment on the sort of Pandora's box, sorry, George, that we're opening with OBD2 devices being sold to consumers?
As another Israeli company that also hacks into vehicles, this is a very serious Pandora box, and when you connect an unauthorized OBD device to your car, I don't think that your warranty will void because no one will know about it, but if you try to do it to just connect an ECU to your vehicle, and you're not supposed to do that, your warranty would void. You're not supposed to do that. So these are, most of them are problematic. Some of them do try to handle these issues of cybersecurity. Some of them even, some of the devices we know work by inductions. They just read from the bus itself. However, they physically cannot write to the bus. But for some, it's just blocked by software, and then you can hack into these.
It goes to the point that we were making before, too. It's just shared responsibility among all sorts of stakeholder groups, including the person who owns the vehicle and is bringing this device into their vehicle, whether it's something they plug into the OBD port or whether it's an infotainment device that they're carrying in their pocket. The makers of these devices need to consider security. We need to consider security on the vehicle side, and as somebody mentioned, also on the cloud side. So, you do have to look at it at every level and every place.
And someone who just looks at things, purely offensively, anything that communicates with the outside world is an attack vector. That's the way I look at it.
I second that. I'd put one of those in my car about the same time I'd install a remote viewer for someone and put a camera in my house or a microphone. So, thank you. We're out of time.
Thank you. Cheers.